Welcome to Tanzu on VMware vSphere with CloudControl integration. I'm using CloudControl 6.5.0 for this integration with vCenter 7.0.1 U1 build, Kubernetes version 1.18.19. So it's a very interesting product that we offer. We're going to go over the onboarding process. We also giving access control to CloudControl, so it controls the cluster. We're gonna go over onboarding a private registry, okay, and that will allow us to set up image deployment policies that will help you with the control of images that you deploy on your cluster. We're also going to go over a access control policy and how to create one. Next, we're going to talk about onboarding a Tanzu Kubernetes cluster.
Onboarding. Onboarding is the process of importing a Kubernetes cluster into CloudControl. For Tanzu, we're going to have to import the management cluster and also the Tanzu Kubernetes cluster. So you have to import at least one Tanzu Kubernetes cluster, but the management cluster must be imported. When you import the cluster, you need the kubeconfig file for the cluster. This file is generated when you log into the cluster. So I'm gonna show you how to generate the kubeconfig file for the management cluster, and I've done that already. I'm just gonna show here. You just do the login command, okay, into your cluster. Once you log in, you can see that there is a .kube folder in your home directory. In this case, I'm logging as the root user, and the file is called config. So I've transferred this file into my desktop, and now I'm going to use it to import the Tanzu management cluster into CloudControl. So you're going to click on the home tab here, and you're going to click inventory and Kubernetes cluster. Now you have, when there is no cluster in CloudControl, you have this link at Kubernetes cluster here, but you also can access it with the actions menu at Kubernetes cluster. So either one, I'm just going to click that. And there are two options on the import section of adding the cluster. One is to import the file or enter the contents of the file. I'm just going to import the file as I have it on my desktop here. I'm going to browse and I'm going to pick my management config file here. I'm going to click continue. And here I have all the clusters that are on that config file. So I'm just going to pick this first one here, which is the management cluster. And I'm going to click continue here. So as you can see here, the vendor type, it detects as a Tanzu management cluster. I can give it a friendly name. I'm just going to call it the management cluster. And I have to give the password for the administrator at vSphere.local. So I'm going to give that password. Then I'm going to click continue. Now CloudControl is interacting with Tanzu and it's going to start gathering information about the cluster. As you can see here now, it's connecting to the Tanzu management cluster and is getting the nodes, the namespace, the deployments, all the objects in the cluster. So the cluster can have its inventory inside CloudControl. Wait for that to finish. Okay, it found all the objects. We just want to press continue. And it shows all the master nodes here. Okay, I can just press continue here. I don't have to do anything. And I have my management, my Tanzu management cluster imported into CloudControl. Okay, and you can navigate here. You can look at the nodes, you can look at the namespace, the deployments. I mean, everything is inventory, and you can get more details by clicking, navigating to the system that way. Okay, so this shows you how to import the Tanzu management cluster into CloudControl. Next, we're going to import the Tanzu Kubernetes cluster. Now you have to import at least one Tanzu Kubernetes cluster, which is the cluster that you're going to be doing work on. So to do that, you also need the kubeconfig file for the cluster. And to be able to generate that kubeconfig file, you need to log into the cluster. So here's the command I use to log into the cluster. I have to specify my namespace and also my cluster name. And I executed that. I have the config file here generated. I transferred that over to my desktop. So now I can go ahead and import into CloudControl. So I'm gonna again click on the Home tab, Inventory, Kubernetes cluster. You're gonna see here that I have a management cluster here already. So I'm gonna click on the Actions menu, Add Kubernetes cluster. And again, we're gonna use, you can import or enter the contents of the file. I'm gonna use import as I have the file in my desktop. I'll browse, and here's my Tanzu config file. I'll press Continue. I'll click my cluster. I'll give it an IP address. So I'm gonna call this Tanzu cluster 80. Okay. And I have to give the password. Say continue. And it's gonna start going over the discovering process of getting all the nodes, namespace, deployments. Okay, it has discovered all its objects. So I press continue. It's going to display the master node. I just press continue here. And then what's going to happen here is the enable root access control dialog window is going to come up. When you enable root access on a cluster, you transfer its control to CloudControl. So you're going to have a policy in place in CloudControl that's going to determine who can do certain operations in the cluster, like creating a pod, doing a deployment, those kind of things. By default, everything is denied when you enable root access control. So I'm gonna not enable access control now because I want to show you that I can do things on the cluster, and then we'll do that later in another section, so you guys can see how it's enabled and what you have to do to be able to create objects. So I'll say not now, and now this is my cluster. And again, you can navigate to here. You can see that my access control is disabled. You can see the deployments. I mean, you can navigate to the objects in the system through this nice interface here. You can see the pods and so on. So this is how you import a Tanzu Kubernetes cluster into CloudControl. Again, keep in mind, you have to import the management cluster and at least one Tanzu Kubernetes cluster. Well, we got to the end of this presentation. Feel free to check out our documentation site for the integration guide. We create an integration guide for this, which goes into details on what we have talked here. I hope you enjoyed and have a great day. Thanks for watching.